Welcome to The Explainer. Okay, let's just dive right into this. Today, we're unpacking a highly specific, kind of esoteric framework for understanding human suffering, and it's called Young Bub philosophy. Now, even if you don't personally subscribe to these beliefs, the way this system mathematically breaks down the human experience, it's absolutely fascinating to explore. Because whether you're dealing with a minor annoyance at work or, a devastating family crisis, this philosophy proposes that literally nothing is random. Instead, it suggests there's this precise cosmic mathematics behind exactly why we experience hardship, and more importantly, how we're supposed to process it. So, we're going to look closely at the source material to objectively understand exactly how this belief system categorizes our daily struggles, our ancestral debts, and the incredibly strict rules it lays out for helping others. To really wrap our heads around the source material, we first need to establish a little foundational terminology. According to the text, everything operates under what is called grand nature. You can basically think of grand nature as the whole dimensional universe, the ultimate operating system governing all of existence. And the rules of that operating system? That's called Jungbub, which translates to the righteous law. Now, the teachings we're exploring today are delivered by a figure referred to in the texts as Sesungnim, or the Great Mentor, who acts as the messenger of these universal laws. So when the text refers to the laws of grand nature, it's talking about a completely inescapable, universal design. So here is our roadmap for today. First, the concept of study. Second, inherited hardships and debts. Third, the power of silent absorption. Fourth, handling other people's problems. And finally, number 5, the law of 3-7. Okay, let's jump into section 1, the concept of study, where we look at redefining hardships. This is where the philosophy completely flips the script on how we typically view human suffering and life's obstacles. It totally redefines the word study. You see, in Jungbub, study doesn't mean hitting the books in a library. The Great Mentor asserts that every single difficulty you face, whether that's a frustrating dynamic in your household or, say, condescending words from a coworker in your sales department or even a major life crisis, is a customized study element. It's a highly specific situation assigned directly to you by grand nature so that you can learn something from it. There are countless ways of living, right? And therefore countless customized ways of studying. The struggles themselves are relative, but the core purpose is always exactly the same. You are supposed to absorb the situation and extract a lesson. Moving on to section 2, inherited hardships and debts, and the concept of generational trauma. Looking into where severe, inescapable hardships actually come from is where the source material presents some of its most intense and, honestly, provocative claims regarding family lineage. According to the text, minor annoyances might just be daily studies, but severe familial hardships? Those are something else entirely. The text uses some really dramatic examples, like a family giving birth to a disabled infant, a sudden stroke, or a cancer diagnosis. And the philosophy claims these events literally never occur out of the blue. Instead, they're the result of spiritual mismanagement and debt passed down over generations. It's like if previous generations, say your grandparents, mismanaged their lives and ignored their own studies, that murky energy builds up. It might skip a generation, sure, but the text insists it always returns within 2 generations, falling squarely onto the current generation to resolve. This whole concept essentially reinterprets modern science through a purely spiritual lens. It asserts that an inheritance through the so-called DNA is, in essence, a result of the debt being accumulated in the family line. So the really crucial takeaway here is that Young Bub views physical biology and DNA merely as a vehicle. You aren't just inheriting, good looks or a talent for music from your ancestry. You are inheriting their unresolved spiritual debts. The philosophy states that the law of grand nature makes absolutely no mistakes. If a severe condition is present in your family, it's because a massive responsibility now rests upon you to fulfill the exact study that your ancestors ignored. So what actually happens if you just ignore this customized study? Well, the consequences, according to the text, are pretty severe, and they unfold in 3 distinct ways. First, the unlearned lessons simply pass down to your future generations. You're basically just handing the debt over to your kids. Second, the presence of the hardship acts as a massive pressure cooker, forcing all those hidden family contradictions to surface. And third, all the shallow judgments and grudges that were previously kind of obscured by polite family ties, they get dragged right out into the open. The hardship is basically a catalyst designed specifically to expose the dual nature of our personalities, leaving us with absolutely nowhere to hide. Let's look at section 3, the power of silent absorption. This is all about how we handle hardship.
Okay, so if hardship is a customized study of generational debt, how does the great mentor say we should actually handle it? Well, the text offers a highly specific and quite challenging solution. It states, point blank, you have to keep your mouth closed because you are a sinner. Now, to understand this within the context of the philosophy, finding yourself in a severe situation, like caring for a spouse with cancer or a disabled child, marks you as a sinner. It means you or your lineage have accumulated debt, and the prescribed action, complete and utter silence. You're told to swallow everything you hear and see, absorbing all the difficult words and painful circumstances without complaining, simply because you've been placed in a situation that specifically induces them. Let's look at the stark contrast and how you can react to the study. The instinctive human reaction, for sure, is to become annoyed, to complain, or to just reject the difficulty outright. But the text warns that if you show irritation, even if you've been quietly observing for 3 whole years and you finally just explode because of a provoking situation, your entire study resets back to zero. Literally, years of effort become totally vain. On the other hand, the silent reaction requires a highly deliberate, measured approach. You have to chew down condescending words and just absorb them. By doing this without rejecting them, the text claims you magically turn those harsh words into a medicine that actually strengthens your energy and eventually leads to a true awakening.
Now, the numbers 3 and 7 are hugely significant in this framework. The text promises that if you can quietly absorb your specific hardship for either 3 or 7 years, you will compile an immense amount of mental data. By digesting your restlessness, your frustration, and your pain over this specific timeline, you'll organize enough wisdom to literally publish a book. And structuring this wisdom is absolutely vital to the philosophy because keeping it all to yourself isn't the final goal. The whole purpose of gathering all that data is to eventually release it back out into the world. Here's how this all builds into the ultimate goal of the philosophy. Step 1 is quietly absorbing the hardship. Step 2 is deeply repenting and compiling all the wisdom you've gained over those 3 or 7 years. And step 3 is where the real payoff happens. You use that archived experience to benefit others who are enduring similar pain. By leaving a mark on the world and actively helping others navigate their lives, you're elevated to someone of significant value. And it's only through this final act of charitable, world-benefiting wisdom that you finally clear that ancestral debt handed down through your family line. Moving right along to Section 4, handling other people's problems. Let's talk about helping others. Up to now, we've really focused on our own hardships, but how should we interact when we encounter the suffering of other people in our daily lives? The text draws a very sharp line between 2 types of people here. First is the nosy person. This is someone who witnesses a lot of problems, but just blurts out answers right on the spot. Because their solutions are unbaked and trivial, they make no allowance for the information to digest, and as a result, they earn zero respect and live a life treated with contempt. Contrast this with the silent observer. This person witnesses the exact same joys and sorrows, but simply says, "Oh, I understand," as a courtesy. They don't boast, they just humbly absorb. Over time, the sheer quantity of their silent absorption transforms into a really high quality of energy, eventually leading to true enlightenment. This really boils down to one absolute rule in the text. Don't give out an answer unless asked. The philosophy states that if you see others struggling, it's just not your time to intervene. Brushing past the principle to say something like, "Hey, I believe you should do this," causes all the energy you've carefully sustained to just gush out wastefully. Premature interference completely ruins your own study and guarantees that whatever solution you think you're providing will be incorrect. And finally, Section 5, the Law of 3-7, diving into the cosmic mathematics of it all. So, if we're supposed to remain silent and not help people prematurely, how do we actually know when it's time to act? Well, the text provides a literal, cosmic, mathematical formula for this. Under the law of 3-7, your energetic makeup is divided. As you spend years silently observing and absorbing the hardships of life, that energy accumulates. The text explains that this massive accumulation represents 70% of the equation. This huge amount of absorbed data then naturally pressurizes and compresses down from the top, forming a dense 30% concentration of pure, actionable wisdom right at your core. And it's only when your energy hits this exact 3-7 ratio that you're truly ready to help someone else. When that 30% core energy threshold is finally met, a fascinating sequence of events is triggered by grand nature. First, you hit the threshold, then, as if perfectly on cue, the universe naturally brings someone into your social ties who is longing for an answer. A questioner will actively seek you out to obtain your 30% energy. Once they ask,
Your only job is to listen fully and clear up any ambiguity in their situation. And finally, after you completely understand their words, a true, finished solution will just naturally rise from within you. The great mentor emphasizes that this law is absolutely non-negotiable. Even the mentor himself abides by this, which is why he always starts by asking, "Is there a question?" You must not overstep your bounds or cross into other people's duties. You must only deliver explanations to a given question, because if someone hasn't actually asked you, your words will never reach deep inside them. The text explains that it's the shared energy between you and the questioner, both having accumulated enough energy to provide and seek, that makes the true connection and the healing possible. This philosophy presents a deeply structured, completely uncompromising view of the universe, right? A world where every annoyance and every tragedy is an ancestral test, and silence is the ultimate tool for generating wisdom. So we're going to leave you with this final thought based on the teachings we've explored today. When hardship strikes your life, are you rejecting your study out of annoyance, or are you absorbing it to achieve enlightenment? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning the mechanics of the world around you.